We also believe you need to get them while they're young, and to that end, we have our sister organization, the Young Americans for Liberty, who have a wonderful regional coordinator who's been here all week helping to found the YAL chapter for UNR. And I'd like to introduce him to you now. Please welcome Adam Weinberg.
Kelly Gardner, everybody. Big round of applause for the work she's doing. So, prepared a few things because this is quite an honor for me to be introducing the gentleman we're all here to see this evening. I was a Ron Paul fan before it was cool to be a Ron Paul fan. I've seen a number of speeches by our guest speaker over the years. Generally, the individuals who get to introduce him are much more illustrious than I, but I suppose there is something that I do have in my back pocket, which is I have the experience of a young person taking a place in Ron Paul's liberty movement from the very ground floor. When I found out that there was this guy from Texas who voted no on any bill that was unconstitutional, I thought, I should write a letter to my representative and say, hey, you should look at this guy's voting record and use it as a study guide. Now, that didn't work out so well, so Ron Paul became my adopted member of the United States House of Representatives. And from there, when he announced that he was running for President of the United States, I did everything I could to support his candidacy. I became a chapter chairman of the Students for Ron Paul at the North Carolina School of the Arts, where I went to school. Very left-wing campus, but you know what? We were the most active political organization on the campus that year. Maybe one of the only ones, but the people who came out were from all different walks of life, all different political ideologies, and they came together to realize that freedom brings us together, it doesn't divide us. And that's what we're trying to do here at the Young Americans for Liberty and Campaign for Liberty. Now, some folks, they don't quite have us straight. How many people here are from UNR? Go Wolfpack. Thank you. How many people here from UNR, this is the first time you're going to see Ron Paul speak? Awesome. Awesome. Welcome to the revolution. So, some people don't quite have us figured out. They think, oh, these Ron Paul loving libertarians and conservatives, they're not into any regulations that can protect the people from abuses. But I think there's a kind of regulation that we think is really important. I think Ron Paul, in fact, has championed this kind of regulation. I want to show you this regulation package I'm talking about. It's called the Constitution. And if you haven't picked up a copy of this wonderful document, the foundational principles of our republic, go out to the Campaign for Liberty table, pick it up, read it, join Young Americans for Liberty and Campaign for Liberty, and hang out with some people who can tell you what this means to your individual freedom and to your future, and that will change your life. I can guarantee it. Now, just a little bit about Young Americans for Liberty. We are the continuation of Students for Ron Paul. We took all the enthusiasm, all the energy, and all the contacts and said, why stop at just a presidential campaign? Let's make this a full-time occupation for the young people of this country so that we can produce new Ron Pauls, new Rand Pauls, new Justin Amash's, new Mike Lee's. Let's make sure that all the young people who want to advocate for free markets, limited government, and the Constitution know there are the resources and the opportunities to not only advocate for these ideas, to not only educate for these ideas, but to lead for these ideas. And that's what inspires us so much about Ron Paul. Some people may not understand why we're driven to support this man and his ideas. There's something unique about a politician who shows a lot of faith in people, not to grab onto the promises that he gives you, but to take on the promise that we can be responsible for protecting our own liberties and for pursuing our own lives free of interference of the heavy hand of government. And that's what Ron Paul is here to talk to you about today. I want to thank somebody who was really instrumental, many instrumental people in putting this together, but somebody you ought to know, David Barber. Where the heck are you? David Barber, back here, president of Young Americans for Liberty at University of Nevada, Reno. I was recruiting all week with David, and he's awesome. He's going out there and getting people to join the movement and identifying people, tracking down people who are out wearing their Gadsden flag shirts, or people who are saying, whoa, Ron Paul's here, and getting them involved in the club. And I said, you have such an immense maturity in approaching people and confidence. How old are you, dude? And he says, I'm 19. And I'm like, and what year? I'm a freshman. So 4 years of David Barber at the University of Nevada, Reno, I think is going to do a lot of good for the Liberty movement here on campus. I encourage you to join Young Americans for Liberty. And I encourage you to support all the efforts in activism, outreach, recruitment, and future leadership development that David's going to be doing here. A little bit more about this Ron Paul guy, for those of you who never heard, kind of what makes him unique. An exception to what they call the gang of 435 in Washington, D.C. Ron Paul's famous for casting single votes, principled votes, when no one else would. There's something positively unique about somebody who's been in government for so long and yet has continued with principled, consistent votes. If you go up on YouTube and you look up Ron Paul and you see a speech of Ron Paul from 1988 and you look up a speech of Ron Paul from 2011, you're going to hear the exact same message and you're going to see the same votes cast in the United States House of Representatives. Because if nothing else, Ron Paul is a principled man, motivated by individual liberty and the Constitution, and that's here today what we're trying to spread is a message of liberty to the young people of this country. A little bit about that record about Ron Paul. What did those votes come out to? Well, here's a little bit about Ron Paul's record. In his years in the United States of Representatives, he's never voted to raise taxes. 12 terms, guys, never voted to raise taxes in all these decades. He's never voted for an unbalanced budget. He's never voted for a federal restriction on gun ownership. He's never voted for a raise in congressional pay. He's never voted to take a government-paid junket. That's when they take some money to go do fact-finding and diplomacy and other kinds of things abroad. He's always gone on his own dime when he's traveled abroad. And he's never voted to increase the power of the executive, whether the executive were a Democrat or a Republican. Ron Paul voted against the Patriot Act when most of Congress passed it. When most of Congress passed it without even reading it. And that's the trend that continues today. They stamp a nice name on it, this thick. They say, it's an emergency, guys. We got to pass it. The people demand it. And Ron Paul is the lone voice saying, no. We must defend our Constitution at all costs. This liberty is the security that Americans need. And there's something else about this Constitution. It's based on the premise that, the people have the power to regulate their government, and that the government should not have the power to regulate over the rights of the people. This is the essential thing, that in our movement we're bringing people together. Maybe they think of their own liberties, they think of their First Amendment liberties, or their Second Amendment liberties, their Fourth or Fifth or 10th or 14th Amendment liberties. But really, you can't have any of these liberties unless you can accept the liberties of others. You can't just have don't tread on me, you have to have don't tread on anyone in order to have a free society. So what I want to bring you in here today is to keep in mind that this message is stronger than ever. That 5 years ago, nobody knew not only who Ron Paul was, but what were these ideas of free market economics, Austrian economics. What were the dangers of central banking? What were the dangers of a government that acts extra-constitutionally? And now more than ever, Americans are waking up to this message because the times demand it. The debt that we face, the devaluation of our currency, the erosion of our civil liberties, the fact that foreign policy has not changed now in the last 10 years under Democratic and Republican administrations. People are looking for a real change, which is returning to the constitutional republic that has made this country great. And so what I want to say here, just to wrap it up, is I think we have an immense opportunity through Campaign for Liberty, Young Americans for Liberty, to create an entirely new generation of people who will follow in the footsteps of Dr. Ron Paul, Dr. Rand Paul, so that we no longer have to say, well, there's these one or two guys who are doing it, but in fact an entire generation of young people who are brought up on these ideas, inspired to leadership, and decided to take the responsibility to defend our liberties and to defend our rights. I want to bring in now my hero, the champion of the Constitution, the hero of the Republic, the great teacher of liberty, and the man I will absolutely, positively, personally be supporting with all of my heart and soul for President of the United States in 2012, Dr. Ron Paul.
Thank you very much. Thank you. What a nice welcome. Adam, thank you, and Kelly, thank you very much for putting this together, and YAL, thank you for the invitation as well as Campaign for Liberty. It's great to be among friends. And you know, when I go to the floor to give a speech, I never get a reception like that. Matter of fact, it's usually empty. So, but I get my energy by leaving Washington, not from Washington. A lot of people ask me, how do you manage to put up with that stuff for all those years and listen to it and listen to the double talk? And it's because I don't stay there all the time, and I get to leave once in a while and meet real people that have to make a living, have to pay the bills, and live within their confines. So this is beneficial, and I think it's getting easier. There was a time when I would go about on college campuses 10, 20, even 30 years ago. And believe me, the rooms were always much smaller, and one at a time, you know, we would get converts. But now there are a lot more, and I am just delighted. I'm delighted to see so many young people involved, and those who don't consider themselves young are here because you're young at heart, and that is what's great, because the message of liberty is a young message. It's not like freedom has been around for centuries and centuries. The best experiment was here in this country, and it's been going on for a couple hundred years. But unfortunately, there's been a serious erosion of those principles, and that's what we're all talking about these days. And we're seeing the consequences of not protecting those liberties, and that is why, especially the young group, the generation coming out of college now, face such dire circumstances. And not only do they have difficulty figuring out how they're going to pay all the bills for themselves and the country, but also getting a good job. So there's some very realistic reasons why we have to be concerned about what is happening.